All right, guys, so the Penguin has been awesome. We've been loving talking about the Penguin here on the Access Blockbusters Pod on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. It's been amazing, but, Matt Reeves has promised that this will not be the only show that will come out of the Batman universe. They've actually, originally, I believe, they planned to make an Arkham Asylum show, which I think would have been awesome. But then, for whatever reason, James Gunn decided that, this Arkham Asylum show, I think, would be part of the DCU instead of the Batman universe, which are going to be separate. I know a lot of people have talked about, is the Batman universe going to be part of the DCU? I personally don't see any world in which that makes sense, but I've had conversations with those of you in the comments who think that this is the best path, and I think that that's awesome that we can have that discussion. But I think the Batman universe, for me personally, is awesome as it is separate from everything else going on with James Gunn's DCU. Now, Matt Reeves, like I said, has been talking, and he said that they were going to make more shows. And now it looks like, from a report that, again, I mentioned this before, I don't talk about scoops as though they're news. However, there are people who have a lot of extensive knowledge with the insights into Hollywood that I wouldn't consider scoops. I would consider them, maybe not quite Deadline or Variety or The Hollywood Reporter. Like I mentioned before, those are sites that you should really trust when it comes to news in the movie industry, but rather, maybe a tier below. And Jeff Snyder is one of those people who usually has some pretty good knowledge of what's going on inside Hollywood. He actually, I believe he was one of the first people to to mention that Robert Downey Jr. was coming back to the MCU as Doctor Doom, and that was about a week before Comic-Con, and at that point I was like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. It turns out it was true, and so he is generally pretty reliable. So he has an interesting story, and I'm not going to take this to the bank, right? This is not essential confirmation that this is going to happen, but he is saying that the next show, the Batman universe is going to revolve around Barry Keoghan's Joker. Now, Barry Keoghan's Joker was not really seen, but sort of heard, right, at the end of the Batman where the Riddler is in prison, and we hear him talking to the prison. It was one of those scenes, honestly, in the original Batman movie that I thought, you could have probably cut that out, because obviously it's really cool that we have a Joker in this universe, but at the same time, did it really do anything for the movie? Not really. And then, a few months later, a deleted scene was released, right, where we saw Barry Keoghan as the Joker. We didn't actually fully see him because, the majority of the scene was framed in such a way where his face was blurred or we saw the back of his head. But we got to see a little bit more of him, and we got to hear his performances laugh. And it was great. I thought this is a very different kind of Joker. I think, Jared Leto had the word damaged written on his forehead, even though he looked, I don't know. It was a very interesting Joker, but this character looked like he actually got dipped into acid, based on his hair and his skin and everything. So yeah, this was a crazy looking Joker from what little we could see. And Barry Keoghan is a fantastic actor, obviously, and I thought his performance was great. And so it seems like we're going to be dipping back into this character. Makes sense. He didn't really get a lot to do in the original Batman movie, and it looks like we're going to actually get a series with him. Now, is this a good idea? Honestly, I don't think we have enough to decide that. I mean, we have, the Penguin to stand on, which the Penguin is great, but it's obviously not going to be made by the exact same people. I don't think. It could be, but if it isn't, then, we don't know what the level of quality is. However, I think that with Matt Reeves at the helm, right, and just the level of success HBO has had, and the level of success that the Batman universe has had, I think that we have pretty good confidence in that, if Matt Reeves is going to make this series, he's going to make it good. So that's really encouraging. The other thing that we've heard recently is that there will be more series in this Batman universe, and also they will be very character focused like Oz. So if we are getting this Joker series, it's going to be very focused on Barry Keoghan's Joker. Now that's interesting because Joker stories, and we're not talking about the Joaquin Phoenix Joker because we can have this whole debate, but that really wasn't a traditional comic book Joker. And again, people have their opinions of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it just really wasn't the comic book Joker. But the whole thing about the comic book Joker in general is that most iterations don't have an origin story. So it's interesting because, even though the Penguin is not an origin story, the show, it's not an origin story for Oz, it still, has elements of his backstory, right, that are revealed about his brothers and what he's going through. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do make a Joker series, how far they're going to be willing to delve into this character. There were also reports that this character was going to appear in a small role in the Batman 2. We'll see what happens, but I think this is interesting at best. And honestly, it's less about the Joker himself and less about Barry Keoghan himself and more about just the fact that this Batman universe has been just pumping out gold and it's been really successful thus far in delving into these characters and showing and telling really dramatic stories. So I'm really excited if that's the case, and I'll be excited basically whatever character they decide to focus on here. So guys, if they do make this Joker series about Barry Keoghan's Joker, what do you think it's going to be about, and are you excited for it? Let me know in the comments down below.